Hello friends, welcome to the another session of ePathshala. I am Dr. Monica Soni. I am from the Department of Political Science, GGDST College, Sector 32, Chandigarh. I am here to present the module, and the name of the module is Swami Dayananda Saraswati, the Reformist. Swami Dayananda Saraswati was a great educationist, social reformer, and a cultural nationalist. He was the founder of Arya Samaj. As being the social reformer, he presented his scheme of social reforms in a very detailed and comprehensive way, and he has included various sections of the society in his scheme of social reforms. Like in case of women, we see that he was totally against the evil practice of child marriage and enforced widowhood. The pitiable condition of child widows pained him the most, and he was also against the Parda system. He suggested the practice of Nigopa for these, child widows, and he believed that an educated man needs an educated wife to bring greater social reforms in the society. In his efforts to do work for the education of the women, he provided them opportunity to get education in DAV schools and colleges. In the field of education system, we see that he believed that the lack of knowledge was the only reason of the adulteration of Hinduism. So he opened Gurukuls, and where he taught the youth the teachings of Vedas, and he also inspired them to spread these teachings of Vedas back to the society. In the case of religious reforms, we find that he was totally against the system of idol worship and the evil ritualistic religious practices. He was a firm believer of the worship of one God only, and he regarded religion as a source to regulate our mind, body, and soul. And with regard to the caste system, dear friends, we find that he was also totally against the caste system, untouchability, and social inequality that was prevalent in that time of social system of India. He informed people, he guided people about those texts of Vedas where there was no mention of these kind of practices at all. And in the field of state, we find that he was not at all concerned about the existence of the state. All he was worried about that state should focus on the betterment of the people. He emphasized that state should focus on the fourfold objects of individual life, that is material prosperity, religion, enjoyment, and salvation. He also stressed on the individual freedom of a man. The objectives of this module is to map the basic contour of the early nationalist response and to analyze the socio-political thought of Dayananda Saraswati. Swami Dayananda was a great educationist, social reformer, and also a cultural nationalist. He was a great soldier of light, a warrior in God's word, a sculptor of men and institution. Dayananda Saraswati's great contribution was the foundation of Arya Samaj, which brought a revolution in the field of education and religion. Swami Dayananda Saraswati is one of the most important reformers and spiritual forces India has known in recent times. The philosophy of Dayananda Saraswati can be known from his three famous contributions, namely Satyarth Prakash, Ved Bhashya Bhumika, and Ved Bhashya. Further, the journal Arya Patrika, edited by him, also reflects his thoughts. Swami Dayananda, the great founder of Arya Samaj, occupies a unique position in the history of political ideas of modern India. When the educated young men of India were slavishly copying the superficial aspects of European civilization and were making agitation for transplanting the political institutions of England and Indian soil, without paying any heed to the genius and culture of the Indian people, Swami Dayananda boldly hurled India's defiance against the social, cultural, and political domination of the West. Swami Dayananda, the greatest apostle of the Indo-Aryan culture and civilization, also proved to be greatest exponent of the most advanced ideas in politics in India. He was against idol worship, caste system, ritualism, fatalism, infanticide, sale of grooms, etc. He also stood for the liberation of women and upliftment of depressed classes. Keeping in mind the supremacy of Vedas and Hindus, he opposed Islam and Christianity and advocated for Shuddhi movement to reconvert the other sects to Hindu order. Dayananda expressed political ideas too when he described theory of state, forms of governments, three-cameral legislation, functions of government, rule of law, etc. Swami Dayananda was a great educationist, social reformer, and also a cultural nationalist. The dominant personality of Dayananda Saraswati has found extraordinary reflection in the virility of the Arya Samaj movement and in almost every one of its adherents. The contribution of Arya Samaj in the field of education is commendable. According to Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, quote, among the markers of modern India who had played an important role in the spiritual uplift of people and kindled the fire of patriotism in me, among them Swami Dayananda has occupied the chief place, unquote. Life sketch. Dayananda was born in an Orthodox Brahmin family at Tankara in the Morvi state in Kathiawar in 1824 to Karsamji Tiwari, who served as a priest in a Shiva temple. The childhood name of Dayananda was Mula Sankar. Under the loving care of his father, Dayananda had acquired proficiency in Veda, Sanskrit grammar and Sanskrit language from childhood. Like Gautam became Buddha after witnessing 4 ordinary scenes of life, Dayananda's lifestyle changed after a single incident. When he was 14 years of age, he kept fast on the Shivratri day with the other members of the family. At night, other members of the family were worshipping Shiva began to sleep, but Mulaji remained vigilant. He saw a rat eating the offering made to Shiva by the devotees. This incident led him to think that the idol of Shiva could not be real God. When the idol could not protect the offering made to it, it could never protect the whole world. He became convinced about the futility of idol worship. This experience aroused his conscience, and Dayananda became a staunch crusader against the vices of Hinduism. His father tried to involve him in family life through marriage with a view to put restriction on his independent mind. Dayananda was not willing to enter into the bondage of family life. Therefore, he fled from his home and reached Mathura. In 1861, at Mathura, Dayananda came in contact with Swami Brijananda. This contact is a decisive point in his career. He became his disciple and studied the ancient religious literature, various mythological books, and Sanskrit grammar text. The philosophical foundation of Dayananda took concrete shape at Mathura. He got knowledge and realization. Mula Sankar became Dayananda Saraswati, and by the instruction of his guru, Vrijanand, dedicated himself to spread the message of Veda and to fight against the conservative Hindu religion and wrong traditions. Dayananda, though had contact with Brahmo Samaj, they were not prepared to accept the supremacy of the Vedas and transmigration of soul. To fulfill the mission of his life, he founded Arya Samaj at Bombay on 10th April 1875 and passed the rest of his life in establishing Arya Samaj branches at different places. The reformative zeal of Dayananda irritated the orthodox Hindus. Dayananda stood firm and resolute in the face of criticisms. He died of food poisoning on 30th October 1883. On women, education, religion and democracy. On the question of reforms in the women, Dayananda was opposed to the evil practices of child marriage and enforced widowhood, which according to him did not have the sanction of Vedas. The pitiable condition of child widow in the society, which prohibited remarriage, evoked his deepest concern. He therefore suggested Nigopa, a non-permanent cohabitation of widow and widowers, and later even widow remarriage. For the prosperity of Aryavarth, that is India, Dayananda's worldview had a crucial place for education. An education based on moral and religious foundations and meant for all the four classes of men and women was what Dayananda wanted. The burden of this education was, according to him, to be shouldered by the king or state. He stood for compulsory education. India's awakening, he thought, hinged on this factor. He was in favor of an educational system which would emphasize on grammar, philosophy, Vedas, sciences, medicine, music, and art. The political philosophy of Dayananda Saraswati has two central ideas, somewhat contradictory to each other. The first is the idea of an enlightened monarchy, a concept that he borrowed from Manusmriti, that is, a monarchy thoroughly rooted in obedience to dharma. The second somewhat contradictory notion is that of elective representation, that is democracy, though there really is no contradiction since in the Vedas there are references to assembly and the election of the king. Stressing the principle of election, he interprets the king as a president of the assembly. Moreover, politics for him was inseparable from morality, and he therefore argued strongly for the guidance of political leaders by spiritual leaders. Dayananda extended his democratic elective principle into the functioning and organizational structure of the Arya Samaj. He further visualized a polity which would be the embodiment of decentralization, a vast commonwealth with the village as the unit. The following are some of the principles out of the 10 important principles of the modern India. Number 1. The source of pure knowledge is God. The link between Vedas as guardians of true knowledge and an Arya Samajist is indispensable. He must assimilate its contents and make it popular among the people. Ethical justifications of actions are a must. The Arya Samaj is devoted to the idea of emancipation of the world in all aspects. Number 5. Rays of knowledge must dispel the darkness of ignorance. Number 6. One must leave enough for others. Man's well-being can only be identified with the collective development of his fellow men. Political ideas. The political ideas of Dayananda are as under. Swami Dayananda was an idealist in politics, and he found his inspiration from the study of Vedas. His method of interpreting the Vedas was quite different from the traditional method. He started with the age-long tradition that the Vedas contain truths which are universal in their application and which can stand the test of acute reason and searching science. The Indian tradition is that even sciences like medicine, mathematics, music, astronomy, politics and economics are based on Vedas. Theory of state. Swami Dayananda doesn't make any inquiry about the origin of the state. He concentrates his attention on the discussion of the character of a fully organized state with all its organs of administration. According to him, the state stands for the realization of the highest objects of life. The objective of state is not just to look to the secular and material welfare of the citizens, but to promise the fourfold objects of human life, namely religion, material prosperity, enjoyment and salvation. He wanted the state to direct its activities in such a way that these may be conducive to the securing of freedom from the bondage of the world, the form of government. Swami Dayananda is dead against the rule by one man. In his Satyarth Prakash, he says that absolute power should not be entrusted to one man. An autocratic king never allows others to be equal to him. His own personality may overshadow that of others. He declares that an autocrat is sure to be partial in order to fulfill his own selfish ends. Swami Dayananda admitted the necessity of having a president for representing the unity of the state. The right of ruling the people is to be conferred by the people themselves. Dayananda fit in his theory of republicanism with the divine right of kingship theory, which he propounded by the Dharma Shastras. He observes that if the persons entrusted with the state affairs are men of learning, they would be able to secure great power for the state. The three assemblies. Swami Dayananda states, quote, "Let the three assemblies harmoniously work together and make good laws, and let all abide by those laws. Let them all be of one mind in affairs that promote the happiness of all." Unquote. Swami Dayananda allows autonomy to educational and religious bodies. Normally, the political or legislative assembly should not interfere with the decision arrived at the education and religious assemblies, but the legislative assembly cannot hold itself totally aloof in educational and religious matters. Swami Dayananda held the law alone as the real king. He exhorts all to remember the teachings of the Vedic text, which he says, quote, "Verily the just law alone is the true king. Yes, the just law is the true religion." He writes, quote, "The law alone is the true governor that maintains order among the people. The law alone is their protector. The law keeps awake whilst all the people are fast asleep. The wise, therefore, look upon the law alone as dharma or right. When rightly administered, the law makes all men happy, but when administered wrongly, without due consideration as to the requirements of justice, it ruins the king. Rightly administered law promotes the practice of virtue, acquisition of wealth, and secures the attainment of heartfelt desires of his people." Unquote. Swami Dayananda doesn't like to provide even a separate set of judicial courts for the trials of king and other high officers. He upholds this dictum and elaborates it by stating that while the punishment inflicted on the king should be 1,000 times heavier than on an ordinary person. Functions of government. To Swami Dayananda, government is the agent of the community. It has not only to provide security against internal and external dangers, but also to promote the highest aims of human life. He admits the need of allowing the citizens to hold private property. He believes in the inequality of division of wealth, but at the same time apprehends that the rich might give trouble to the government. He also laid great emphasis on the maintenance of strong army. He describes that there is no other way of maintaining independence of the state than the raising up of a strong defensive force within the government. Dayananda Saraswati and Arya Samaj. On 7th April 1875, Dayananda Saraswati formed the Arya Samaj at Bombay. It was a Hindu reforms movement, meaning society of the nobles. The purpose of the Samaj was to move the Hindu religion away from the fictitious beliefs. The motto of the Samaj was to make the world noble. The 10 tenets of the Arya Samaj are as follows. God is the source of all true knowledge, and all that is known through knowledge. God is existent, intelligent, and blissful. He is formless, just, merciful, unborn, endless, unchangeable, beginningless, unequaled, the support of all, the master of all, omnipresent, immanent, unaging, immortal, fearless, eternal, and holy, and the maker of all. He alone is worthy of being worshipped. The Vedas are the scriptures of all true knowledge. It is the paramount duty of all Aryas to read, teach, and recite them, and to hear them being read. One should always be ready to accept truth and to renounce untruth. All acts should be performed in accordance with dharma, that is, after deliberating what is right and wrong. The prime object of the Arya Samaj is to do good to the world, that is, to promote physical, spiritual, and social good of everyone. Our conduct towards all should be guided by love, righteousness, and justice. We should dispel avidya and promote vidya. No one should be content with promoting his or her good only. On the contrary, one should look for his or her good in promoting the good of all. And the last point related to is that one should regard oneself under restriction to follow the rules of society calculated to promote the well-being of all, while in following the rules of individual welfare, all should be free. Upliftment of women. The Arya Samaj not only sought spiritual reorganization of the Indian psyche, it also worked towards abolishing various evil social practices. Primary among these were widow remarriage and women education. The Samaj launched programs to support widow remarriage in the 1880s. Shuddhi movement. The Shuddhi movement was introduced by Maharishi Dayananda to bring back the individuals to Hinduism who were either voluntarily or involuntarily converted to other religions like Islam or Christianity. Shuddhi or purification was imparted to those who sought their way back to Hinduism, and the Samaj did an excellent work in penetrating the various strata of society, taking back the depressed classes into the folds of Hinduism. Educational reforms. Maharishi Dayananda was fully convinced that the lack of knowledge was the main culprit behind the adulteration of Hinduism. He set up a number of gurukuls to teach his followers the knowledge of the Vedas and for them to spread the knowledge further, and inspired them to spread the knowledge further. Inspired by his beliefs, teachings, and ideas, his disciples established the Dayananda Anglo-Vedic College Trust and Management Society. Religious reforms. Although Dayananda immortalized the Vedas, however, he opposed idol worship. He raised a voice against ritualistic religious practices. Those religious performances would lead to social, economic, political, and religious degeneration of India. He denounced polytheism or worship of God in different forms. He emphasized that this polytheism has brought the division in Hindu society. Opposition to caste system and untouchability. Dayananda launched his crusade against caste system and untouchability. He reinterpreted the system of Varna mentioned in the Veda. It was meant for occupational purpose in the society as per the doctrines of Guna, Karma and Swabhav. The society was divided into different Varnas like Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishyas and Shudras with their respective occupation like worship, protecting the country, carrying on trade and commerce, and to serve the other three castes. This occupation were interchangeable. He emphasized the political need of this division of the society. In a similar vein, Dayananda denounced untouchability and labeled it as inhuman and unsocial. Status of women, upliftment of women. The Arya Samaj not only sought spiritual reorganization of the Indian psyche, it also worked towards abolishing various social evil practices. Primarily among these were widow remarriage and women education. The Samaj launched programs to support widow remarriage in 1880s. Maharishi Dayananda also underlined the importance of educating the girl child and opposed child marriage. Dayananda championed the cause of women. Child marriage and parda system were the orders of the Hindu society. Women education was restricted and widow remarriage was not allowed. Dayananda protested against all these evils. He cited the high position of women during Vedic period. So, he argued in favor of the equal rights of women with men. He emphasized on women education and created provisions for them to read in DAV schools and colleges. He also asserted the right of women over property. He opposed child marriage and argued in favor of legislation to stop this evil practice. He also condemned polygamy and polyandry. His reforms gave a moral boost to the women and helped in their upliftment. To summarize, we can say though some of the critics criticize Swami Dayananda Saraswati because of his inclination towards the Hinduism, but we can say that he was a thorough social reformer who gave a very detailed and comprehensive scheme of social reforms, and he included the various sections of the society under his scheme. like religion, women, education, caste system, etc. He was also interested in bringing the decentralization of powers and rule of law. He tried to, his one another significant contribution can be seen in the field of his Shuddhi movement, under which he tried to bring back the depressed classes of the society into the fold of Hinduism. Thank you.